This is a presentation for the Belfast Software Craftsmanship community titled The Software Craftsman. If you are someone who takes pride in their work, enjoys the feeling of making your customers happy, or even seeks out ways to be better at your job, then it sounds like you could be a craftsman. Software craftsmen are therefore all about these kind of ideologies and attitudes when building software. The scope of what software craftsmen are and do is vast, but simply put, software craftsman brings professionalism to software development and the software industry. You may ask, aren't software developers and software engineers already professionals? And the answer is not really. The unprofessional professionals. Software rules the world, there's no doubt about that. Yet those who write the software often have a poor attitude to how they do it. However, it doesn't always begin like this. Fresh young programmers start with eager intention to do good in the world, but over time that attitude dwindles. Messy code that no one maintains, managers who only care about metrics and never listen to their team, customers that demand features be done yesterday. To name a few of the common issues that often plague software projects. That once eager programmer now becomes a disgruntled programmer, only doing the minimum to get by until they leave, to be replaced by a fresh young programmer. If you've ever worked in a software project, you know the kinds of pitfalls we are talking about. Software built with bad practices is shipped every day. The programmers know it, the managers pretend they don't. No one knows with certainty that it won't fall over, and any testing that was done, if at all, was probably manually completed with only a happy path thought out. Those who still care about doing good and providing quality will try to push back. And to appease these voices of concern, the managers will add technical debt tickets to the project backlog. Someday, they say. Someday we will fix this, but for now, focus on the new features. The someday cycle. Have you got a wardrobe full of clothes that you have accumulated over time? You probably go through it at least once a year, picking up a garment at a time and deciding if it should go on the keep or discard pile. Oh, I might need this coat, or these trousers might fit me again. You say to yourself. Into the keep pile they go, finding their way back into the wardrobe with hopes that someday they might be used, but that someday will never come. Every year you repeat the same process, wondering why you have so many clothes, so you better sort them, only to keep throwing those same clothes into this someday pile. How do we avoid the cycle of keeping clothes we'll never probably use and making sure any we have will be used? You learn about good attitudes and techniques for looking after your clothes and storage space, building the habits required to break the cycle, and making sure it never happens again. Likewise, to avoid the technical debt someday cycle for your software projects, you learn about good attitudes and techniques for looking after your code, building the habits required to break the cycle and making sure it never happens again. The fight against complacency. So you've had enough justifying why your code is bad, not feeling confident in what you do, and constrained by the lack of motivation in your team. You need a way to fix yourself and those around you. This is where the software craftsman comes in. Software craftsmen have a mission. Having a software craftsman on your team is the most efficient way to improve morale. They are advocates for good standards, stand up for the rights of the customers and developers, and commit to ensuring their knowledge is shared for all. Anyone can be a software craftsman. It is not a select group of elite people. It is not only for the highly experienced. It is not people who think they are more superior than the software developer. Your professional attitude makes you the software craftsman. You could be a person who has just started their journey and still be able to call yourself a software craftsman. Many developers are already software craftsmen. They care for what they do, subscribe to many of the practices of a software craftsman, and are dedicated to always improving themselves. Sometimes they may not want to have the label of craftsman, and that is okay. This is not a religion. When someone calls himself a software craftsman, they are just telling you their attitude and showing you their values. Striving for quality in ourselves and our work is at the core of software craftsmanship. However, there is a more important goal for the software craftsman. We are responsible for preparing the next generation. Crafting a community. Good developers want to work with good developers. We do not want to work with colleagues who hinder us, but rather work with people who encourage us and learn from each other. The best way to change the software industry for the better is by creating a community of professionals who take the knowledge shared among that community and inject it back into their companies, mentoring and inspiring the less experienced developers. This is even more so important in the current age where developers are being created through processes of accelerated learning, not having the time to properly develop their professional attitudes. The practices advocated by craftsmen evolve over time. Current practices such as agile and test-driven development will one day probably be replaced. Similar to how the programming languages and tools change, so too will what we see as good. This is why a software craftsmanship community is essential for the software craftsman to be successful. The community can share its knowledge and work to spread it wherever they can, be it what is good now or what may be good for the future. Creating a culture of learning is not only up to the organizers of a community, it is everyone's job. The attitude you build from learning through the community impacts those you work with, be it developer or customer, and your attitude feeds back into the community where others will benefit from your experiences. Whether you have only begun your first programming language, or you have been working in the software industry for years, consider adopting the software craftsman identity to help yourself and everyone around you. You never know where your journey may take you.